Okay, so the 1939 New York World's Fair. Think of a World's Fair as kind of like a temporary theme park. It's intentionally only meant to be open for a year, maybe two. The first Captain America movie, they have something called the Stark Expo that Steve Rogers goes to. This is modeled after the 1939 New York World's Fair.
Mm-hmm. It's lots of inventions. There's some like really famous things, like the World's Fair in Paris is the reason that the Eiffel Tower exists. I'm pretty sure.
I think that's right.
They built it for the fair and then they loved it and decided to keep it up.
Yeah.
I know that Nikola Tesla did a bunch of stuff at the World's Fair to like show off electricity and light bulbs and stuff. The DC generator, etc. So yeah, lots of connections with like the future, like the world of the future and stuff like that.
Yes. The New York World's Fair in particular is the largest fair that's ever happened in the United States. 44 million people attended this over the course of 2 seasons. So they were open for 2 years, April to October 1939 and 1940. It's 2 square miles, and it had zones on communication and government and transportation, food and amusements, right? And the theme, as you say, was the world of tomorrow. So that's on all of the posters and everything for this, the theme for the fair, the world of tomorrow. Lots and lots of companies use this for advertising. This is where GM and Ford did a lot to sell the United States on cars. There's like videos that you can see of like little models of cities with like interstates and like highways and things running through them, like decades before the interstate system is a thing, right?
Yeah, 2 or 3 decades.
Yes. And if you look at it, these models, it's like, oh yeah, that's a freeway. That's a 6 lanes. Like that's the 101. That's I-5. You know, I'm in LA.
And the timing is really interesting too, because 1939 to 1940, World War II has started.
Yes.
In Europe, but the U.S. hasn't gotten involved yet.
Yes.
And a direct result of World War II and Eisenhower as a general visiting Germany, and he loved the Autobahn and their ability to move military quickly, is what started off the interstate system. In fact, I think I-80 that comes through us, through California and Iowa and stuff like that, is the Dwight D. Eisenhower Highway, right?
You are correct. Yes.
Yeah.
And very, very, very much influenced by the military. There are even portions of the interstate that are intentionally designed such that you could land like a military, bomber on the interstate, right? That's why they're sufficiently wide and long and straight and stuff like that.
There is a wives' tale about that, like every 3 miles there's supposed to be like a 1 mile section. That's not true.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, it is designed in a way that like planes can land on it if necessary.
So not just cars, right? This is the place where a lot of people first saw a television set. This is a place where a lot of people first saw a color photo. General Electric showed up and was showing off the first fluorescent light bulb. Carrier had a building that they built that was showing off air conditioning to people. And a lot of people were seeing that for the first time. Because I'm a Disney guy, little tangent. 1939 World's Fair in some ways is an inspiration for Disneyland itself, which opened in 1955.
Epcot, right?
Well, Disneyland first.
Sure.
Primarily because a lot of the exhibits are sponsored by corporations. So it's both entertainment and advertisement, which happens at Disneyland. But then, yes, you're right.
Epcot. Also Epcot.
Big inspiration
it's all
for Epcot.
about advertising, yeah.
Yes. But like Epcot like has pavilions for different countries, right? Where you can try their food and learn about their culture. 1939's World's Fair has that. That's the government zone.
The whole
right?
world, yeah.
But not just that, even the construction, the buildings. They're in the center of the 1939 World's Fair, there's a building called the Perisphere, which is basically just Spaceship Earth, right? And so in the middle of Epcot,
no way.
Yes, there's a geodesic dome. You can go inside, you can ride a ride. If you Google Perisphere, there's a big round sphere building that people can go inside. There's an exhibit inside. It is Spaceship Earth.
I'm Googling it. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, whoa. It is
Yes.
for sure Spaceship Earth.
Yes.
Oh, and it's like right at the end of this big chunk of water, like kind of like the mall in Washington, D.C., but it's kind of, it's also exactly how Epcot's set up.
Yeah.
At the end of a big section of water. And there's stuff inside it. Wow.
Yeah.
That's Epcot for sure.
Yes. So anyway, we could do an entire podcast on New York and the New York World's Fair. And on Disney and how they're interrelated. But I bring it up because DC Comics is in New York City, right? And they use this as an opportunity to promote comics. They were well positioned to take advantage. And what they did was they printed a special comic book called World's Fair Comics. It was 96 pages. So that's pretty long. That's like a triple size issue, right? Has a cardboard cover, so it's a little bit more durable than a normal comic book. And just like all of the theme books, it's an anthology. So there's a bunch of different stories that DC's doing. Yeah, the theme books that DC's doing at the time, it's an anthology just like them. But it's plucking stories from all of the different anthologies. So in the 1939 New York World's Fair comics, there's a story from Superman, which is Action Comics. There's a story from Zatara, which is in Detective Comics, right? The Sandman, which I think is Adventure Comics. So don't quote me on that, right? There's, basically it's a sampler of everything across their line.
Right.
And they're selling it for 25 cents. And that was pretty successful for them. So when the World's Fair comes back in 1940 for another season, they had another edition of the World's Fair comics. If you scroll down a little bit, Brian, you can see it.
I see it.
In front of the Paris Fair are standing Superman, Batman, and Robin. So additionally, in 1940, they hosted what they called a Superman Day, where they had a bunch of events for kids. Like they had races and like other feats of strength that they got to compete in. They like rode on elephants, right? And they gave away a bunch of these comics.
Yeah.
Admission was half off that day.
10 cents.
Yeah.
Children admission, 10 cents. It's on one of these covers.
Yeah. I've got a poster here in the document. I'll put it in the show notes, but there's also a video that I want you to go watch, Brian.
Oh, okay.
And this is video from Superman Day. So we've got a bunch of kids.
Bunch of kids with little red S's on their chests. They're racing. There's girls doing jump roping. Oh, girl races.
Potato sack races.
Yeah. I don't know what that part is. It looked like a mob. It looks like a bunch of girls killing each other.
Like a pinata had broken and like they're all trying to get the candy.
Oh, you think it's a pinata?
I don't know.
It does look like a bunch of kids being greedy, like trying to get stuff, but it also looks like a rugby scrum. The styles are so interesting.
Yeah.
Dude riding an elephant. Well, Superman up on some kind of pedestal.
Yeah, it's a float.
It's a float, yeah.
He's looking super. He's got his fist on his
We got the military playing music following Superman's pedestal float.
Anyway.
Yeah, I think I've gotten to the point where
you can imagine, a bunch of people showing up for what is essentially a big DC ad, right? And they're pushing the comics.
Well, I mean, if you want to like go down that road, you could say that like every experience at Disney or even like the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, it's just a series of advertisements.
Yes.
Right? It's all marketing. It's all public relations and stuff. Yeah.
So they had such success with this book, World's Fair Comics. It's a sampler of everything that DC has to offer. It introduces people. It boosts sales of their other books. They decide to try it as a more regular thing, even as the World's Fair is not continuing. So in 1941, the following year, they start a new book, and the first issue of it was called World's Best Comics. But from the second issue of the comic onward, it was called World's Finest Comics. And it came out quarterly, so 4 times a year, and had stories from all of their most popular characters, almost always containing a Batman story and a Superman story. In the 1950s, superheroes become less popular. They had to scale back production of lots of things. World's Finest at that time goes from 100 pages to about 26 pages. And so instead of having separate Batman and Superman stories, they would have one story where both Batman and Superman are teaming up. And so if you talk to people about World's Finest, that's what they will think of. They will think of it as the Batman-Superman team-up book.
So is this like where the Justice League comes from?
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
That comes from the Justice Society of America. But it is where people start to think of DC as more a universe, right? Where stories can cross over and coexist. And it's not just like all of the Action Comics stories are over here and all of the Detective Comics stories are over there, and never the two shall meet, right?
Right. Yeah, they're not separate universes. They're a shared universe where Metropolis and Gotham are places you can travel between.
Right. Yeah. And DC is starting to develop a cohesive brand across multiple of their intellectual properties, right?
Yeah.